Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. We are so excited to have you today and to spend this next hour or so with you all. And I'm just going to give it about a minute to have everybody trickle in. I don't know if anyone has been on the town hall before, but Kitsis always mentions how nowadays, why don't they just allow everybody to come in? Why are they acting as if this is like a conference hall? No idea, but I share those sentiments with him.
There are doors. We cannot all fit through at the same time.
I know. I guess the same as a virtual event too. Never really thought of it that way, but we will kick off in about 30 more seconds. Just given some time. Allison, Ryan, how are you doing this morning? This afternoon. This afternoon.
Great.
Oh, it is
Yeah,
afternoon now for me. Yeah, that's good.
me too. Still morning for you though, Sarah, right?
Yes,
I
it
was to say
is
we're
11. I know,
um
mountain time, it's always such a trip, these time zones.
I'm planning a big road trip this summer, and so setting up my calendar for time zones with clients who are also traveling and figuring out like us both getting it right of where we'll be and when is a fun Rubik's Cube.
Man, what a puzzle.
Yeah,
That just makes my brain hurt trying to figure out where everybody would be.
yeah.
All right. Well, folks, we will get started. Welcome to today's Solution Spotlight. It is about what makes Betterment for advisors better for planning focus advisors. We have XYPN member Ryan Frailich of Deliberate Finances and Allison Considine of Betterment for Advisors. So here at XYPN, it's our mission to help advisors start, run, and grow the RIA of their dreams. And we offer all these types of solutions that you need to run your business, and Betterment for Advisors is part of that solution set. So we are just delighted to have them with us today and are grateful for you to join us today as well. So to introduce our speakers, Allison is the head of strategy and business development at Betterment for Advisors. She currently leads partnerships and other strategic initiatives for Betterment's advisor business. She spent several years in private wealth management at Morgan Stanley prior to joining Betterment and is dedicated to helping advisors grow their businesses and provide a great client experience. She has a BA in economics from Bowdoin College and lives in New York City. Ryan was a teacher and a school administrator overseeing HR before becoming a fee-only financial planner. Working in HR revealed a lot about the financial lives of employees, and the light bulb just went off. Too many smart and talented people feeling overwhelmed with finances, always wondering if they're making mistakes, and then too many people who want help are being taken advantage of or are just shut out by large financial institutions. And that's when he changed careers, became a certified financial planner, and started Deliberate Finances. Ryan currently works with couples in their 30s and 40s to assemble the pieces of their financial puzzle, from getting married to managing student loans, what it means to plan for retirement, and what to expect financially when a baby is on the way. And given his work with young professionals, student loans are frequently a big piece of the planning process for his clients. And when he's not working, he spends time exploring his adopted home city of New Orleans with his wife and two young kids. And after the webinar is over, he has invited you to reach out to him and plan a visit to see him. He says he'd love to go out to lunch with you all and talk about where you'll go to dinner, in
I mean,
addition to talking about financial planning, of course.
I mean that.
Yeah. Oh, I know you do. I would definitely go to New Orleans just for the beignets, but to also see you too. And while I wrap up my whole spiel of this, I just want to review some housekeeping items for you all. And today there is the Q&A tab. There's going to be plenty of time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. So please do drop your questions below in the Zoom toolbox down there. You can upvote questions as appropriate, but again, just drop your questions as needed, and Ryan and Allison will take the time to vet through them, to answer them, and just get you the answers that you need. And then last, we have some upcoming events coming on. So there's June 5th, which is an Ask Me Anything to scale or not to scale your RIA business. And then June 11th is another solution spotlight. Create onboarding efficiencies for better client engagements with FP Pathfinder, Wealthbox, and Right Capital. I will drop those registration links in the chat below so you can register as appropriate if you're interested. All right, that was a lot. I am going to let Ryan and Allison take the stage, and I will be back later for Q&A.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everybody.
Thanks, Sarah.
Very excited to be here today. And thanks so much, Ryan, for joining me. Before we dive into the conversation, I did just want to take a minute to mention a recent update that some of you might have seen. We announced last week that we're strengthening our partnership with XYPN even further, which we're really excited about. We've been a solution in the XY tech stack for just about a decade now, as Sarah mentioned. But we recently announced that we're going to be eliminating our technology fees for all XY members, adding a dedicated support line and some additional resources. So we're really excited for the next chapter of the partnership and all that's to come. We have a great community of XY members on the platform today, and we want to grow it even further. So with that in mind, I'm really excited for today's conversation with Ryan, who's been a longstanding partner of ours, and is definitely a power user of the platform. So excited to hear more about not just his experience with the Betterment platform, but how he built his practice overall. So Ryan, thanks so much for joining me for this. I'm excited.
Happy to do it.
Great. Okay, so we heard from Sarah, your bio a bit already, but would love to just start by having you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you decided to start Deliberate Finances.
Sure. So I am, not someone who entered the industry straight out of college. So I spent time working in schools, teaching, and then leading in schools. And one of the things I learned is, there are all these people who are really bright, who are well-educated, who are successful, and who are doing really kind of just not the optimal things for their finances. And so that sort of like light bulb went off. That was back in 2014, 2015. And through conversations with my own financial planner, he said, you should explore this. So if any of you know Jude Boudreau, you can thank him for me being here, because Jude is great and well connected in the industry. So I assume some of you might know him. And so that sort of led to me looking around to wanting to start my own firm. And so I did that in 2016. Great financial planning. You launch your own firm and cut your income to zero while you have your first baby on the way. I suggest it. You should definitely do that. No, it was a great decision. So I started in 2017, really with the idea of like, how can I help people, who are walking the same path that I'm walking, young, buying your first houses, getting married, combining finances, managing student loans, maybe having your first kid, all those sorts of things. So that was sort of my focus when starting. And here we are, 7.5 years later. And I would say my focus is pretty similar. I have 2 retiree clients, but the vast majority of my clients, 90% of my clients fall between late 20s and mid 40s, people making, anywhere from $200,000 to $600,000 or $700,000 a year, and who have all these investment questions, but also have all these questions about things like student loans or combining finances, or how do they save for college while also paying off their student loans, while also maybe supporting a parent who needs help. So the classic kind of sandwich generation stuff. So that's generally who I work with. I'm one of those sort of lifestyle firms. So I've got 52 households currently. I got up to 60 and actually just went through a round of sort of moving off some clients I'd worked with for a while to try to increase my capacity for the future. So I'm sort of in that 50 to 60 household range as my cap. And I think probably a good transition would to say, and because of tools like Betterment, I can do it pretty efficiently. So I'm trying to run a small, pretty efficient practice where I can spend a lot of time with my kids and a lot of time in the city that I love.
Great. Thanks. Yeah. So for a lot of people who are either making a career switch like you did, or coming from a larger institution, the idea of starting your own firm can obviously be very daunting. So would love to hear from you. What were the biggest challenges that you encountered when you were first growing your practice, and how did you navigate them?
Sure. I'm going to answer your question. I'm also going to say that if any of you are XYPN radio listeners or KidSys podcast listeners, if you'd like to hear my journey over 3.5 hours, there are 2 XYPN podcasts and a KidSys podcast, and they basically go from like, holy crap, what did I do? Like, I basically had public therapy with Alan about all my insecurities and misgivings when I was like 8 months into launching. And then like a year and a half after that, I was like, okay, I'm kind of getting my feet under me and I understand what I'm doing here better and I feel more confident, to with KidSys where it's like, oh, this thing worked. So that's, if you want 3.5 hour version, that it is out there. It's also a weird thing for me to tell anyone to go listen to me for 3.5 hours when you are listening to me for an hour already. So I think in terms of the biggest challenges, one is just like, I am more interested in the people side of this business than the number side of this business. The numbers are important, of course. The people side, obviously is very connected to that, but I want to spend as much time as possible with the people that are, entrusting me with helping them make decisions for their lives. And so for me, trying to figure out how do I do that and build a business that focuses on the human and not on getting bogged down in Excel spreadsheets too often or bogged down in various software programs was really important. And that was a challenge at the beginning, especially, pre-COVID. A lot of companies weren't remote. A lot of clients weren't used to doing things remote. So just trying to figure out, like, how do you build an online business when it was like happening but wasn't fully there yet was a big challenge. And then I think a second thing for me is frankly the investment piece. I was classic, like, read enough articles to understand index investing, but didn't fully grasp the nuances, right? It's like that person who knows just enough to be dangerous, right? And I would say, like, before I started taking CFP coursework, I would put myself in that category of like, buy an S&P index fund. That's fine. That's all you need to do. It's like, well, that's a way oversimplification of what we need to do here. And so for me, I think managing investments was one of the most intimidating things, because the idea of building portfolios, of knowing exactly what percentage should be in which asset class and how they should be different across tax treatments was just like not the area I wanted to spend all of my time and felt a little bit overwhelming. So that was definitely a challenge as well, solved by Betterment, but also true. And then I think the third thing, and this is a little bit separate of our conversation, is just like this can be a lonely endeavor when you go out and do it alone, right? So I'm started a firm by myself and I'm a hard extrovert who now works from home. And so building that community has been challenging, but also has been really rewarding. Some of my best friends are people that are in the XY network, literally. Like there's a photo of someone who's in the XY network or with her son holding my son on his shoulders the last 3 years in a row at Mardi Gras, because they come every year now. And it's someone who I met literally at an XY conference, and we've stayed in touch since then. So I think building that community is really important if you are going to go out on your own. I know not everyone on this call is going to work in a solo shop, but for those of you who are, or in very small shops, like, you don't have to do this work alone. Even if you are physically standing alone in your house or sitting alone in your house most days.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, you and I first met at an
We
XYPN
did.
live conference several years ago. It's such a
I
great.
think I actually may have come up and said, if you ever need me to do a webinar or something, I'm happy to do it.
And
So,
I took you up on it. So here we
yes.
are.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. And yeah, just a reminder, as Sarah said at the top too, feel free to throw questions in the chat as we're going along, because we will try to tackle them along the way, or certainly save plenty of time at the end. So switching gears a little bit now, Ryan, I want to talk about what the process looks like for onboarding new clients at your firm, kind of bringing someone in, what that initial first couple of meetings looks like, and then getting them on board and what's involved there. And I think you might have some slides you want to show to that
Yeah,
point.
I can show, let me pull something up here. Give me 1 second. So I'm going to share my screen. So this is a document I share with prospects. So basically, if a prospect books a call on my website and says, "Hey, we're interested in becoming clients," they get an email that says, "Fill out this survey," where I get, some basic information about them, their finances, what the worries are on their mind, what they're hoping to get out of the relationship, and then it also shares with them this, so they get a little bit more information. And I'm not going to spend time going over all of it, but it kind of lays out what subscription-based financial planning looks like. But this is really where my process is. I think it looks, pretty similar probably to what a lot of you are used to. So let's say someone comes on, we have that prospect meeting, they agree to become a client. Great. So we do all the logistics, the agreement and setting up the invoice, all that. I use AdvicePay for that. AdvicePay is a great tool. I will say I was one of the beta users for AdvicePay, and it was not great when it started, and it is like invisible to me now. Like I never think about it. It's just there. It powers me getting paid every month. I spend 2-3 minutes putting together, the invoice and sending it out at one time, and then it just goes on autopilot. So that's a piece of tech that I like. I like so much I never think about, because it's just in the background doing what it needs to do and taking any sort of billing or invoicing off my plate. First meeting is, to me, all about getting to know the person, right? So I don't spend any time hardly in the first meeting talk about investment balances or debts or mortgage rates or anything like that. It's who are you? What's important to you? What are your fears? What's money like in your relationship if it's a couple? What are the things that you never regret spending money on? What are the things that you look at when you get your credit card statement and you go, I wish I hadn't done that, right? That's my whole first meeting. Between meeting 1 and meeting 2, I really use a lot of that happens with XY, right? So I then have them connect everything into Right Capital once I know who they are, so I can actually make sense of these numbers and whether those numbers support what they're building towards. So I use Right Capital for that, and I use the account aggregation with Right Capital to gather all their data. I also ask, for all the documents and PDF statements, because of course there's differing information on those. The second meeting is really a getting organized meeting and a cash flow meeting. And so I go over everything, that they've got going on cash flow wise, make sure that we understand what's coming in, what's going out, and where is it going. I use a modified version of the First Step cash management system. So some of you may know that. But it's essentially, what's fixed, what are you saving for future things that are important to you, and then what's left over. And I sort of look at the what's left over as, those are all the discretionary things that you have kind of month to month control over. The third meeting is really where we get to investments. And so, I work with a lot of people who, if you ask them about investments, they know pretty little, right? Some it's all the way to they think, I've got 4 screens up and I'm doing trades and I'm tracking markets in real time, which I am decidedly not doing. But some people think that that's a part of it. And even though I screen on the front end to make sure people understand that's not what I'm doing, they may understand that's not what I'm doing, but they don't necessarily know what it is I do want to do. So I do a lot of education. So I'm going to, at lightning speed, go through an educational slide deck. Now, I'm also a former teacher, so know that I would never talk this much to a client. I stop, I ask questions, I make them interpret the graph and regurgitate back to me what it is they're seeing, that sort of thing. But I do this. So I start with this, and you'll notice it says, and Betterment. As people say, what's that? And I say, well, Betterment's automated everything I believe about investing, and they're doing it more efficiently and more accurately and more consistently than I could ever do it. So I have sort of outsourced that component of investing. Now, my clients don't have to use Betterment. If you choose to self-manage at Vanguard, or there's a really compelling reason for some reason that you have to keep your money elsewhere, that's okay. 90% of my clients end up at Betterment. Some will linger because they're like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to. I've heard Vanguard's amazing. And so they want to stay at Vanguard. And then enough things go wrong with doing it at Vanguard that they eventually are like, oh, there's a reason Ryan's suggesting Betterment. So I go over this. Like I said, I'm going to go at light speed through some of this. This is directly pulled from Betterment's portfolios and then pulling it into another service to show the graph. I just like to show people, what you can expect from different type of portfolios over long periods of time. So that helps them to understand, what are we going to do with retirement money versus the kids' college funds versus, a bat mitzvah that's 8 years away, which is one thing that I have a client who's saving for. So we get an idea of exactly sort of how much risk to take based on history. This is, of course, just one view. We put this in a wider context. But I try to build in throughout the conversation, like I pulled this from Betterment. These are Betterment's portfolios that I'm using here. Go on a little bit further, I'm sure most of you have seen some of these sorts of charts before, the stack rank charts. Hey, look, don't try to guess what's happening from year to year because you'll be wrong. Bring in DFA. So I'm also I have the DFA training to use DFA funds in the portfolios. So that's another partnership that Betterment has. So if you're not familiar with DFA, I do suggest, they have wonderful resources. So doing a training with them, but we're not here to talk about DFA. But I think just helping people understand hey, that S&P 500 index fund that you have bought for all 3 of your accounts, your Roth and your traditional IRA and your taxable account, it may have been doing really well these last, 13, 14 years, but that doesn't mean that's a good idea if we take a much wider lens to not have any international diversification. So I use that chart. Since we can't predict, I'm moving a little fast. Talk about fees. People don't understand. And even once you show at this point, people are like, oh, well, the fee is only 0.65% difference, right? For those of us on this call, I assume most of you understand the impact of fees and why low fees matter and all those things that is commonplace for many of us. But so many people are, they have an account set up at Edward Jones, it's 1.5%. And then they've got a 401k with a small employer that's also charging 1%. And they left $80,000 over there when they left their job from their 20s. And just showing them actually you're invested in the exact same thing that we could do over here at Betterment, but for 1/10 or 1/8 of the cost. So I like to highlight that with just obviously this is an oversimplified example. No one's life works like the example that I have on the screen right now, but I try to show them what you're doing is costing you a whole lot more than what you could be doing over here. and getting you much better results. This also sometimes will bring up the question of like, well, if fees are so important, why should I use Betterment? Why shouldn't I just use like a Vanguard or somewhere like that? And I think, low cost is good. No cost, there's a cost somewhere else, right? So like the Fidelity free index funds, like, well, then you have to navigate the Fidelity platform, which is nobody's idea of a good time. Let's talk about fees. Talk about politics. Yay. I stole this from someone on Twitter. I wish I could self-brand it because it's great. Don't get too high, don't get too low. You're never as dumb or as smart as you might think you are in market cycles. And this one comes up a lot for my clients. Like, look, I live in New Orleans. Everybody I work with thinks about climate. Everybody is thinking about what is going to happen to our city that we love and what is happening to the city that we love. And a lot of them that leads to what should we be doing with our investments? Is there anything I can be doing there that would, maybe lessen the impact of climate change? So I bring up the Betterment Climate Impact Portfolio. And I'm always careful to say like 5 years is not that long of a time, but there is a Betterment portfolio that is, you can see here, like the blue line is very closely tracking the red line, but the blue line is actually the climate impact portfolio at Betterment. So it has actually done slightly better than the core. And Allison, correct me if anything on that is wrong, over 5 years. Is 5 years a long enough time horizon? We could argue probably not, but at least that trope that is often trotted out there of like, well, you can't, invest for your values because it's going to cost you investment returns. Like, well, actually the evidence does not seem to support that. Everyone doesn't use it, but what I like is that I can use the tools that Betterment provides to, use the core portfolio with your VTI and VOO and the sort of like very basic ETFs for a lot of clients. But also for those that have more customized needs, like say wanting to do climate impact, I can do that too, while also not having to then go spend a bunch of time building it individually. And it's, pretty darn good. Is it perfect for every client? Well, no, because every client is going to have different values and different ways they want to do it. But I like to just highlight that there isn't actually a trade-off here. And then to get into actual recommendations, I just do thumb up, thumb down on how they're doing because people don't need to know much more than that. And then I get into recommendations. So that would take a lot longer and would be a lot more interactive, but I try to highlight throughout that investment education, that I have an option for them where we can invest their money that will save them a lot of time and save me a lot of time. And most people opt in on the spot. I'm going to pause there and let Allison ask a follow-up question because I've been going for a while, but I could keep going.
No, that's great. Thanks. And I think seeing all the charts is really helpful. And for folks who are wondering, we have fact sheets for all of our, turnkey models available if you want to take a look at the historical performance, like Ryan was pointing out. And we also offer the option for advisors to build their own models with whatever funds they choose to. So if that doesn't have to be part of what you do, you can easily kind of outsource it all, like Ryan was saying, or you can choose to build more custom strategies if you're looking for more flexibility. Up to you. So the next question I was going to ask was how you position Betterment to your clients. I think you already touched on this a bit throughout the presentation, but would love to just kind of hear more about how you talk about the platform. And there's actually a question in the chat that I think ties in nicely. Someone asked about, the behavioral science aspect, and if there are pieces of the Betterment platform that you think help your clients with discipline and good behavior when it comes to investing and kind of staying the course.
I love that question. I'm going to follow up on something you said at the end there, and then I'm going to take that question and go on. So, and if I go off the rails, bring me back to the question about behavioral. I just, like I said, I just did the DFA training, and DFA funds are available. So like I said at the beginning, like this wasn't my strength coming in, but I am many years later and CFP coursework and a lot of reading and research and working with clients. And so I feel much more confident in my ability to build a portfolio now than I did in, 2016, right? And so the idea that I can offer a DFA portfolio now is something I'm really interested in and will probably move towards in the coming months, maybe to years. And so that's something where I can use the tools that Betterment provides to do the rebalancing and to do tax loss harvesting and to do asset location and all these things, but I don't have to go in and actually do them myself. I can say like, these are the funds that I want to use, and this is the percentages, for a 90% versus a 60% stock portfolio, and then know that that automation is taken care of, so I'm not spending time on it. So it's, you don't just have to pull something off the shelf, I guess is the point. And I know advisors that will, use different portfolios that they put together and almost use it like someone might use like an iRebal or something like that, but it's fully integrated. So I think the question about like how do I position it and then how do I use it is like, I say Betterment's automated everything I believe about investing, and they do it better than I could do it, and they do it for a low fair fee. Investing doesn't have to be nearly as complicated as we all tend to make it out to be. Like, arguments that you see on, ESG investing, is it good, is it bad? You can read, PhD length dissertations about how it does impact companies, and then you can have the perfect rebuttal about how it has no impact whatsoever on companies, right? We all get into those weeds. Most clients do not care. They don't care. They don't want to hear about whether small cap or mid cap or large cap outperformed last quarter. They want to know, am I okay? Am I screwing up? Am I doing the right thing? Are my kids going to be okay? And those questions are not answered by, Sharpe ratios and beta and all, jargon that I could just go into from the CFP coursework. And so for me, it's much more about just saying, like, this is a way that does like really research-based best practice and does it in a way that they've purposely built where you can stick to it. So I was a one-time Twitter addicted financial planner. That's not exactly a unique thing to say, but I've been long off of it. But one of the people I miss the most is Dan Egan, who Betterment Behavioral Science Director. I'm not sure if that's his actual title, but I just love the way that Betterment has, like, even though you can see in Allison's background there, like the colors. When you log into Fidelity, it is red and green everywhere. And it is very hard to make heads or tails of what's happening. When you log into Betterment, there's no red and there is no green. And I love that. It's muted purples, blues, grays. Like, that matters. Like, whether we think we fall for these things or not, it really does. I'm also a psychology major, so the connection here is very much up my alley. I love that I can see when clients last logged in. So I can see very clearly when I log in exactly who logged in when. And so say if it's March 2020, for example, and I can see today that Sarah has logged in yesterday. And I also noticed yesterday that she had logged in the day before. And I also noticed the day before that she might need a phone call. Whereas somebody else hasn't logged in since November 2019. Well, now I know that I don't need to go put anxiety on that person who doesn't feel any because they haven't logged in since November. So if I send them an email or a call to say the markets are okay, all they're going to think is, wait, why are you telling the markets are okay? That means the markets aren't okay. So that's another small piece that I think is great. So those are a couple of the behavior science things, but I also just think that the last thing that I think is the most important is just like, I truly believe that most people should not put money in individual stocks. Like, I'm the sort of person who will turn $200 into $2,000 at a blackjack table and then turn it into $300 before I walk away. That's me. Therefore, I don't do individual stocks because I know I don't have the makeup for it, and most people don't have the makeup for it. What do I like about Betterment is, like, you basically can't buy an individual stock. You can ACAT in an existing position, but you can't, and correct me if I'm wrong, Allison, you can't purchase an individual stock. Well, if I believe in that, then I should use a platform that literally makes it impossible. And if you want to go to Robinhood or Schwab or somewhere and take, 2% of your money and have fun, like, have at it. But with your main money over here, you literally can't do the thing that could blow you up. And it kind of dummy proofs it for people. Not that my clients are dummies, they're not, but it helps them in a thing that they're pretty inexperienced in. And the last thing I want to say that is similar to this with the behavior piece is, and I'm going to talk as though you all can respond to me in real time. So I'm going to like ask a question and then I'm going to pause and then I'm going to ask another question, which is weird because I can't see most of you. Think about what happens when a client first does a rollover to, say, Vanguard or Schwab. Where does the money actually land? Does it actually get invested in the allocation that you've set up? Do you sometimes forget, or do they sometimes forget, and then 6 months go by? I have seen that so many times. We have all probably been there where you find someone who like rolled a 401k to their traditional IRA somewhere or to an advisor somewhere, and then it just sat in the settlement fund for months and months or years. I once got someone who had $400,000 in a settlement fund. Luckily, it had only been there like 8 months, but like that's like life altering. So the fact that like money is just invested, like there's no cash. Another thing I like why Schwab, do you have like 8% of your intelligent portfolios in cash? Why is someone's Roth IRA having 8% might be an exaggeration, 4% in cash? So a lot of these other tools that try to like build these portfolios for you also have weird things like that in them, and Betterment doesn't. Like, your money hits the platform, it's invested in the actual portfolios. None of this like cash business. So those are a few of the ways that I see it being done, but I could go for a long time, as you can tell, on the different behavioral pieces. But I think it really like takes away the potential ways people can blow themselves up by literally not giving them that option.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's a great summary. And I think that's why we've always had such a great relationship with XY Advisors. It's a good platform for planners where you're implementing a plan and you're having clients stick to that plan, and it's just making it all easy and working in the background for it. Okay, so let's see. I'm keeping an eye on the chat. We have some more questions coming in that we'll make sure to get to. We talked about how you kind of started from scratch. Now you're serving over 50 households as a solo practitioner, which is a lot. So let's talk a little bit more about how technology has helped you be more efficient there. I think, you've talked about it a lot already, but I know we talked about some other tools you're using and things like that. So we'd just love to hear your perspective on efficiency as you scale and serve more and more clients.
Yep, definitely. You start out, you have lots of time and not very much money. So you spend a lot of time doing things that could take you, I forget there's some principle in psychology where like, a task takes as long as you give it. So like an 85-year-old will have been spending 6 hours to mail a letter, whereas like a lot of us on this call will spend 60 seconds to mail a letter, right? So you start and you've got like 2 clients, you spend all this time and you don't like realize how efficiency is really, really going to matter. I think 50-60 is the cap for a one-person firm personally. If you're really efficient, maybe you could get to 70. But I also like to work out a lot and travel a lot. So I also don't work 2,000 hours a year. I work maybe 1,500 hours a year, maybe. So in terms of technology, though, like I use most of the XYPN tech stack, right? Like I use Wealthbox as a CRM, I use Right Capital as my financial planning software, I use Smart RIA, I use AdvicePay, like go on down the list. I use Betterment. I've never messed with like the amount of conversation I see about performance reporting software in the industry and how much money people spend on it. I'm like, this is a relic, people. We don't need to do performance reporting. It's in real time every single day online. If someone wants a performance report, tell them to log in. Obviously, I'm not that snarky to my clients, but like there's just so many of these things that I think are like archaic holdovers of the way things were once done that don't need to be done that way anymore. So I'm fully digital. I don't ever meet with people in person. I literally did a financial plan for some clients the other day. And by clients, I mean my neighbors. They live across the street and 3 doors down. And I was like, is it weird if we do Zoom? Because all of my systems are set up to do this on a computer and it will be hard for me to do in person. They're like, no, it's fine. And we literally Zoomed from like, I could probably throw a baseball and hit their front door. Everything's online. I try to put as much that can flow together as possible. So I use Zapier for that, which is not part of XY, but it's, it basically can connect through APIs, any data, any service to another service. So if you want to have your calendar system talk to Gmail, which is also integrated with Google Drive, you can do that, right? So like I use that. So for example, when someone books a prospect call, on Calendly, that triggers an email that's sent in Gmail automatically. It also creates a contact for them on my Google Contacts and labels it as prospects. When the email that they get contains a form, when that form is filled out, it is automatically sent to me in a PDF, and that PDF is automatically put in Google Drive in a folder with that person's name, and all of that's done through Zapier. So I would highly recommend learning to use that. I honestly don't use it as much anymore as I used to, but it saves me a lot of time in, how many different places are you going to enter someone's name? How many different places are you going to enter someone's phone number? Those sorts of things. Text Expander is one that I finally got pushed to use by my study group. I was just in Austin with a great group of planners for a week, and they were like, you need to be using Text Expander. I was like, why? But basically you type small snippets and then that types in the longer thing. So for me, like I just use a snippet that says ZBEM, which is Z is just because I don't use it very much. BEM is business email, and I've just made that up. And as soon as I put ZBEM into anywhere on a computer, my business email pops in. Well, that's a lot faster than writing Ryan at deliberatefinances.com. By the way, don't name your business something so long, or if you do, buy the URL for something shorter. I regret that. Because you're going to type it like 25 times a day when you log in different places. So any of those little efficiencies that you can find, I know I just gave a couple of examples that aren't necessarily like XYPN or Betterment related, but like that's the sort of thing that saves you time so that if you can eke out 10 or 15 extra hours, that might be one more client per year that you can serve because you are more efficient with all of the different pieces of the tech stack that can be connected together. The other thing is like, I just don't spend very much time on investment management to bring it to like this. webinar. Like the portfolios are set up. If I move money over, it's very, very easy to ACAT money in. It's like a super simple process. The new way that you open accounts on Betterment, like I could open right now, if I had a new client, couple, I need to open them both Roth IRAs and a joint taxable account, I could do that in 3 minutes. No forms, no sending stuff off to customer service agents, none of the things that you may have been used to doing with Schwab or TD or some of these places. Like I see conversations in advisor world and it's foreign to me. I just don't understand. Like, what do you mean someone kicked back a form to open a Roth IRA? Like, how are we doing this in 2024? And so like I genuinely probably spend like an hour a week thinking about investments, maybe. And that's if I have new clients who are onboarding. There are probably weeks that go by that I literally just don't think about investments. Like I don't do anything with investments. Now, granted, I'm pretty mature in terms of the business. So like I'm not onboarding a ton of new clients anymore. That certainly wasn't the case in 2020 or 2021. But at this point, like it kind of runs in the background and saves me enough time that I'll almost forget how much time it saves me until I stop to think about it.
That's great. That's our goal. So good to hear. While we're on this topic, because I know you touched on performance reporting, there was a question that came into the chat about if Betterment's reporting has worked for you and specifically required information provided to the client in terms of performance reporting to avoid constructive custody of client funds. So I think you mentioned this already, but you don't use another performance reporting software. You just kind of use our in-house reporting. Is that right?
Yeah. I use in-house reporting. I've been through 3 audits by the state of Louisiana. You know, every state's different, so I can't comment about other states, but I've been through 3 audits by the state of Louisiana. They've had no issues. I've provided performance reports and shown them, you know, the different portfolios and what they need. They've had no issues with that. Now, I have a little bit of a strange setup that I know is different in this world in that I don't charge on AUM at all. So I have a flat fee. I saw that there was a question in there about flat fees, so I will answer that at some point. But I don't charge on AUM, so I don't think that's why the regulators, you know, have said it's fine, but like I don't, they've not indicated to me that I need to be doing anything differently on the investment management front. You know, and I've basically decided that I bill enough on my flat fees that I'm happy to basically like effectively get paid a slight bit less and let Betterment's 20 basis points because it's 25 retail, but 20 with the discount that XYPN members get. Like I'm willing to basically give that 20 basis points to Betterment because it lets me focus on the things I want to focus on rather than spending time bogged down in investment minutia. So you know, it's possible maybe that the fact that I don't bill anything out of people's accounts changes things there, but I've, you know, through 3 audits in 7.5 years, never had an issue.
Great, thanks. Yeah, and we have certainly advisors on the platform that do a range of things when it comes to fees. We can do flat fees, AUM fees, tiered fees, and all of that sort of thing. And it works, you know, with any of those solutions.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I think we've covered most of it. So
Can I highlight one thing?
Oh, yeah,
Sorry to interrupt you. Just a couple of things I wrote down in my notepad as we were going. I love that Betterment has the cash reserve now and it pays at the top of what you'll find anywhere. So it's currently paying 5%. I know many of us on this call would say, oh yeah, but you could use a money market fund that's getting 5.15% or whatever. It's like, yes, but like that extra 15 basis points on most people's cash reserves is not very significant. What is significant is having them in the fewest possible places for them to log in. I'm sure some of you have had this. I had this morning. Incredibly smart person who like is very sophisticated in many ways is like, I have accounts at Vanguard and Fidelity for diversification. You're like, that's not what that word means. But people will do that, right? They'll have accounts in different places because they think that that's what diversification means. And so my big thing is like, you should have the fewest number of logins you possibly can in your financial life while still like meeting your needs. If you can get a savings account at the same place that you're holding your investment accounts, at the same place that you're holding your, you know, retirement accounts, that's great. People consider that a big win. So I have a lot of people that have their savings accounts at Betterment, and then they, you know, the buckets, they'll let you break it into buckets. So you can basically put labels. So like I have a client who's saving literally for their kid's bat mitzvah, and they have a picture of their daughter's face and it says her name and it says bat mitzvah and she's 10, I want to say right now, or something like that. I have people that it's like, oh, I have a 13-year-old. I know I'm going to need to buy a car when he turns 16. And so they know exactly what it is they're saving for in their cash reserves. Some people may not like those buckets, but I like kind of mental accounting in that way. So that's another feature that that I like a lot. And we use it for ourselves personally. Like we have one for our escrow for our homeowners insurance, and we have one for supporting a family member that we need to support, and we have one for travel. I'm the bookkeeper for our fantasy football league, so I keep a couple $1,000s in there, and I segregate it so I don't at the end of the year have to send people money out of our checking and savings accounts. So I really like the ability to get paid a very competitive rate while also having like a sleek interface that simplifies your financial life. So what's that? Was it Rogaine or whatever it is? Like I don't just use this in my business. All of my family's money is on the Betterment platform with the exception of my wife's 401k.
Great. Yeah, thanks. I think that's another nice behavioral element that you referenced too, is those kind of goal images, the goal-based framework, but then also being able to add your own images and names and really personalize it client by client.
Definitely.
Great. All right. So I have one more question on my list here, and then we'll move to Q&A because I know there are some questions coming in that I want to make sure we answer with the time left. So the last question is just, what advice would you give to new advisors who are starting out? Other than a shorter firm name for the URL.
Yes, definitely one. Advice I'd give is one, spend the first year going and getting clients. You can perseverate on a million different things. You can find so many workflows to build and operations to streamline, but fundamentally those things don't matter till you have clients, and they're all going to change once you start getting clients anyways, because what looks good in a spreadsheet with all the if this then that sort of things you might think of maybe won't work in practice for you in the way that you built your firm, or you build out the way the firm you used to work at did it, but now you're at a new firm and you get to choose. So actually you don't need to do it the way you used to. And maybe there's a way you can do it more efficiently or more productively or whatever it is for you. So I think the main thing is just like go out there and get clients. I spent too much time sitting behind my computer coming up with really cool saves of time that yeah, now they matter, but they didn't matter back then. And so number one, go out and get clients. In whatever means that is, whether that's blogging, whether that's in-person networking, whether that's podcasting, whether that's YouTube videos, whatever it is for you for marketing, like spend the bulk of your time there. I think too is like these are living things. And I will say, like for me, like you know, I am not going to go on another podcast and talk about my successful business, I swear. But if I were to be interviewed by Kitsis or Alan or anyone like that today, now a few years later, like all the things I said would be like success. It's very human. You hit that thing that you said you wanted to do, and then you get there and you look around and you go, this is all there is. I'm here. So just know that like your business is a living thing and it will iterate and it will change. And what you think you're building towards, you might get there and go, great, this is it for me. You also might get there and go, oh, I want to get bigger. Or actually, I thought I wanted to get big and I got to 60 and I decided, no, I don't. I know planners who thought they wanted to grow large. They hired their first few staff members. They realized they hated managing staff and they liked working with clients, and then they shrunk. Right. So just know that like you don't have to have it all figured out on day one. Even if you wrote a business plan, it's okay if that business plan doesn't end up, like it's still a useful exercise, even if you don't end up executing perfectly on that business plan. So one, go out and get clients. Two, things are going to change and just accept that. Like it would be weird if you could sit down today and write up a business plan that hits for 2029 and everything about it makes sense. Like that would be a strange life. But we're planners, so we all kind of think that way. And then I would say the third thing is like, the more you can simplify your clients' lives, the better. Like what they're looking for, yes, is financial planning and knowing how to look at a Monte Carlo and make sense of it, and knowing how to, consolidate different accounts in a tax thoughtful way and do estate planning in a way that supports their goals. Of course, they want all those things, but mostly they want their lives to be more organized, more simple, and to understand that they're headed in the right direction. And it's like if you can use tools that organize them better and simplify their lives, like they'll be grateful for that. I have several clients who I don't think I've ever saved them $1 in terms of like generating money, but I've helped them just like take all these different things they were doing and consolidate and streamline and let them think a whole lot less about money. Like if you're doing financial planning right, you are spending enough time getting people's plans in place and having enough good conversations with them that then they know that they're heading in the right direction, and all that can recede into the background most of their time. Yeah. The other thing I just wanted to put out here is like Betterment's customer service has always been good. It was spottier in the early years as startups grow. So it was like, not that it was bad, but it was just like a little bit slower. But now like I call, I get an answer, I email, someone emails me back within an hour. I had a situation recently where something was wrong in the platform. Basically, like I did a Roth conversion and it was showing the wrong amounts were showing, and then the wrong amounts got put on a 1099. it got resolved. I got the updated 1099. So I also hear a lot of horror stories about customer service, particularly with the whole TD Schwab thing. And I just don't have that experience. You will hear rumors out there in the world that like Betterment can't ACAT out accounts. So if you ever want to leave an account that's at Betterment and bring it to somewhere else, they'll make it impossible. I'm like, well, sir, update your thinking from 2016. You go to your new provider and you say ACAT and you enter the Betterment account number and then they pull the money over. Like it's true. In the past, it wasn't built out that well and it's fine now. So there's just some things I think sometimes people like to fearmonger about like new businesses and like Betterment's not that new anymore. And I think it's like kind of in the perfect spot between like developed enough to have worked out a lot of the early stage startup kinks, but not a behemoth that has so much bureaucracy that you get tied down in.
Thanks. Yeah, that's great feedback. And that's certainly been our goal over the years. And I think the other thing I'll say is we're constantly trying to iterate, add new features, and it's really driven by advisor feedback. So the input that you've given us over the years, as well as the rest of our advisors, has really helped to kind of shape that roadmap. So we're excited about, where we're at and where we're headed. Okay, great. So let's turn to some of the questions that have come in here, because I know we have a bunch on the list. A couple things here about your fees. You've talked about this a little bit, but someone asked about your fee structure, charging a flat fee to clients. And so what did you start out charging? Has it evolved? And if so, how?
I started out charging, wait for it, my highest annual fee in my ADV was $1,800 per year. Yes, I was wrong. Even if we adjust for inflation, this in 2017, it was not that long ago. That was one part imposter syndrome, and one part at the time I was going to work really, like I thought I could work with 100 clients who were all teachers and charge them all $100 to $150 a month. And that was kind of my business plan. There are lots of problems with that business plan, namely that teachers work during the day, which I should know because my wife is in her 17th year of teaching. And so if you have 100 of them who all can't meet with you during the day, that doesn't make for a very good business. So a lot of problems with my business plan. I started out pretty low. I have raised them steadily and I'm still raising them steadily. So you'll find a million different ways people do this. I'm not saying the way I do it is perfect, but where I've come to is I charge a startup fee that's 1/4 of whatever the annual fee is. So if the annual fee is $6,000, I also charge $1,500 to start up. So that first year is actually $7,500, and then years after that are $6,000. I have raised fees on existing clients a lot of times, and most of them see no problem with it. Like I have a client that started out at $125 a month and they're at $400 a month now. So, they make a lot more money now than they did, but also I was wildly undercharging them. I also quote a much higher fee now to new clients than I used to. I think mine are probably still a touch on the low side for comparable financial planners. If you look at other ADVs and other websites and things like that, I think mine are probably a touch on the low side. But again, I feel fine with that because I feel like I'm giving some of that money to Betterment to take a bunch of time that I would be spending on investments and take it off my plate. So, it really depends on who you're working with. I don't love working with people who make enough money that, in my opinion, like, yes, they have problems, but they don't have the problem, like kind of whether they do A, B, or C, they're going to be fine. Like my sweet spot is people who make $200,000 to $500,000 a year, which is clearly a lot of money in any global context that we're talking about. But in advisor world, that is not necessarily actually where people target. And so I really like thinking about things that are, true trade-offs. Like, can you buy that house and fully fund college and buy the vacation property? No, you can't. Actually pick 2 of 3 or adjust those goals, or one of you needs to get a new job, or right. Like I actually like that trade-off thinking. So just to say, I think my fees are reflective of who I work with. And I think a $4,000 to $6,000 fee for a lot of people in that rough income range is appropriate. But if you're working with people who, are just went through an IPO with their startup and have $3 million at 33 years old, like my fees are too low and you should charge more than that. Conversely, if you're really love working with like retirees who are going to retire with between $500,000 and $1 million and they like have enough to retire, but still it's like kind of tight sometimes, like $3,000 a year is probably a good fee there. Just, really depends. But yeah, so it's evolved a lot and it probably will continue to evolve. I will say, put in a plug for this because I wish I had done this earlier and I didn't do it and I wish I had. I love flat fees. I love people who just have the strength to say, this is my fee. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't work for you, you're not a client for me. So like I'm thinking of a friend of mine, Kelly, who lives in Austin, Texas. She's also a career changer. She's great. And it's like, it's 6,600 for individuals. It's 8,400 for couples, period. And if someone comes to her and says, we have a $10 million inheritance, she'd probably just say, you're not for me because you require things beyond what I'm going to do and necessitate a higher fee. And I'm not going to charge a higher fee just for this one client. I'm just going to say you're not for me because that's too far out of bounds. Niche, drinking game, all that. Sorry. So yeah, that's my long answer for how my fees have gone. But I would put in that plug, like say your fee $6,000 a year for everybody. Just do it. It's so simple. And then anyone who can't pay 6,000, sorry, they're not your client. And anyone who requires a much larger fee than 6,000, sorry, they're not your client either. There are plenty of people out there that's an appropriate fair fee for. We all spend too much time chasing our tails on fees. Like just simplify it.
Yeah, that's great. And that seems to be a theme, a couple comments like that in the chat and questions. So another one around that, an advisor says they want to have flat fees as well, which I'm sure you support. So do you charge clients automatically from their investments through the Betterment platform, or does it come from their bank accounts via Advice Pay?
I do Advice Pay only. There are plenty of people who do a combination. There are people who do from Betterment flat fees. Betterment didn't used to have flat fees. I actually remember asking Allison at a conference, like, are y'all going to be able to do flat fees at any point? And she was like, yes, eventually. And then it did happen. I think I probably will at some point shift to doing some of that. I still sort of have my like outsider mindset, which is funny because I've been doing this for like 8 years now, but I like the idea that anyone knows exactly what they pay and they know exactly when they pay it. And there's no hiding of that. Now, I'm not criticizing anyone who does AUM. I think that's fine too. I'm not going to start a holy war over fees here. I just like that people know what they're paying and can see that and like decide that they're getting value for it over and over. The fear is always, are people going to leave if they see my fee? And like, I don't lose clients. Like I don't. Sometimes I graduate clients, or sometimes clients over the course of 6 months, we talk about how like, yeah, we're getting towards a place where you could probably go on your own for a while. But like, people don't just go like, oh, I got my invoice today for $500. I'm going to cut Ryan. It's time. Like that. Like I'm trying to think of how many clients I lost last year. Two by their choice out of 54. Like it's just not a thing. So if you're worried about charging from Advice Pay instead of AUM or instead of from accounts, right? Because it's a little bit more hidden when it comes from accounts. Yes, they get an invoice, but let's be real, it's more hidden. Like I do not see that as being a problem at all. I saw one question there about climate impact, the same as ESG, socially responsible. Yeah, I think that's the idea. We can make different definitions for those terms, but climate impact is designed to be, it's not investing in companies that pull oil out of the ground. And then also you buying a lot of bonds from companies that are doing research and development in green technologies. And there's a lot of like LED certification there. I'm a little out of my depth in some of the exact specifics, but the portfolio is screened to both exclude some of the worst actors, but also to overweight some of the better actors in that arena. And then there's other portfolios, and Allison could probably there's a social impact portfolio, which to be honest, I don't have anyone using, so I don't know that much about it. But there are a couple of other different portfolios that are ESG portfolios at Betterment.
Yeah, and there's a broad impact one as well. So the broad is kind of the most broad, and then the social and climate focused ones as well. And then we have other kind of non-ESG models too. So yeah, certainly happy to answer more portfolio questions offline and send fact sheets for people who are interested in checking those out. I think the short answer is range of models to choose from if you want them off the shelf, or you can then kind of take them and customize them as needed if you want to create your own. Great. Okay. So that covers the majority, I think, of the fees and pricing questions. And in terms of kind of the tactical implementation side, Ryan touched on this, but you can choose to charge your fees through our platform if you want to, or outside of the platform. Either way works. And we're happy to talk more one by one because I think, each firm's setup varies. So we want to take that into account, and the platform's flexible based on your needs. So happy to talk further about that. Okay. What else have we got here? Oh, this is an interesting one, and it got an upvote too. As a solo practitioner with AUM, are you able to take time away from the business uninterrupted by client requests?
Please give me 1 second, and then I'm going to share my screen. These are my summer plans, y'all. Starts in New Orleans, to Pittsburgh, to Montreal, to Quebec City, to the St. Lawrence River, to Acadia National Park, to Boston. That's Aletta Tibbetts. She's the person I was talking about earlier, who her son and my son are close, and she's a financial planner who I met through XY. To my aunt and uncle in Philly, to Stephanie's family in Virginia, to the beach in Virginia, to ending on July 27th. So we will be gone from June 1st to July 27th. So yes, you absolutely can take time away. Now, I'm not going to be fully offline for that. Like I'll dip in and out of work. My guess is I have some days where I'm working on the calendar at some of those places, but it's totally possible to do a solo firm, because the thing is, most people, like, truly, what can go wrong that someone needs you that day? My only answer is, in a couple, someone died, and you're probably not their first phone call. You might get a phone call 3 days later, 4 days later. I don't think you're going to be first. Maybe. I just don't think there should be that much. It's also a training of clients, right? I am very explicit with my clients up front. Like, if you call me and ask me what I should do about the Apple news, I will say, what Apple news? I don't know. Like, do I read Bloomberg and places like that and Wall Street Journal? Of course I do. Do I think it should have any merit day to day on what I do in my business? Absolutely not. And I tell people that up front, and I set really clear standards with them. I use client engagement standards. Email me if you want them. I don't have them in front of me, but they're stolen from Carolyn McClanahan. They're great. I say explicitly, like, if you want someone who's going to be watching the market on a day-to-day basis, I am not your guy. And that self-selects people out. So part of the reason, to Drew's question, that I'm able to is because I set the expectation that, like, you shouldn't need me to be responsive to you in that real time. I'll also say I took 4 weeks off after my daughter was born, and that happened to be February 10th, 2020 until March 10th, 2020. And I didn't look at my email. It was fine. It was fine. Things got a little crazier after March 10th, but it was fine. So yeah, you can totally do that. Last summer, we spent 6 weeks driving from New Orleans to the Bay Area and back, and we spent a bunch of that time like camping in national parks where I had no service. And I just tell all my clients, and they say okay, and I tell them, give me a call if you have something urgent. Otherwise, I'll get to your email as soon as I have service. And they all say fine. And if you want to optimize for that, will you lose clients? Sure. But can you build a perfectly good business of clients who will never leave because of that and actually like it and think it's cool and interesting and ask you if you want to come to their house in North Carolina that you helped them buy and stay in it, which was one of the things on that list that you saw? It's my client's mountain house in North Carolina. Yes, I'm going to stay at my client's house that they're giving because they think it's really cool that I travel all the time. So, long way to answer your question, Drew. Yes, you can. Can clients go in and make changes themselves? Yeah, they can go in and make changes. Like, and Allison, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. Like, a client can go in and make a change on the Betterment end. I don't think there's any way I can stop them from doing so. Most don't, but like, I can do everything you need to do with any custodian, right? I can open accounts. I can move money once they connect their account. I can ACAT things in. I can send things out. I can do anything I need to do as I would do it at another custodian. But yeah, they could theoretically go in and do stuff as well. I don't have a problem with that. The other day I got an email that someone had changed their monthly taxable account from $800 a month to $1,000 a month. Great, cool. Happy you did it. I also had someone turn off a monthly deposit, and I got the notification, and I texted him, said, hey, everything good? He said, yeah, we just had to put a new roof on the house and I need a little extra this month. No big deal. So I like that they can do it if they need to, and you're always kept in touch. So it's not like it's happening and then you find out weeks later because you're copied on all their like confirmation emails.
Great. Yeah, exactly like you said, designed to be flexible where the advisor can do everything, but also has visibility. Okay, I know we're coming up on the top of the hour here. We have a couple minutes left, and Sarah's going to come back to do a quick survey. So before I hand it back, just wanted to quickly flash where you can find us if you're interested in learning more. We have a page for XY members on our website, bettermentforadvisors.com/XYPN, where you can learn more. You can reach out to us, connect at bettermentforadvisors.com. We'd love to do a demo and actually kind of show you all the stuff we've been talking about today and what the platform looks like. And I did want to highlight, we have a great team of business development reps here. So Enrique will be reaching out. You'll probably see him in your inbox. If you do want to set up a conversation with our sales or relationship management teams, look out for that. And we'd love to continue the conversation offline.
Great. Thank you both so much, Allison, Ryan. It is just such a pleasure always to speak with you. And I'm glad that I was able to share the space with with you and our audience here. So thank you to everybody who is still here. I appreciate your time today. If you're interested in scheduling a call to learn more about XYPN, then I'm going to drop a link down in the chat for you. And then also, if you do want to learn more about Betterment for Advisors, there's also going to be a link in the chat as well. And then lastly, to round this all out, once you leave this webinar, there is going to be a feedback survey. So please do fill that out. It helps us know what the content, what type of content you like, what you did like about this webinar, all good things, I am sure. And just give us other ideas. So that is it. That is time. Thank you all so much. Again, Allison and Ryan, thank you for your time. Have a great rest of your day and see you next time.
Great. Thanks so much. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Sarah.